Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time zone it is, whether you're in the world, it is your Lore Saviour, and you got some double content in one video. Wowzers! Where we're going to be not only unboxing the book and Games Master screen inside this box, but we're also going to be reviewing the game in question, which is of course the Walking Dead universe role-playing game by Free League. Now this might seem a bit left field for some of you, because you've been following the channel for some time. You know that I have quite this infamous, dare I say, phobia of zombies. Chimortophobia is an actual thing, so it's not just being scared of zombies because they're gross, but I've actually done a whole video describing that, which is going to appear on a card up there now, I believe. And if you're coming over from that video, you will know that this should be a review copy from Free League, but it isn't. So I feel that I need to clear the air a little bit, because at Lore by Night we're all for transparency. So in preparation for this video, the one I just mentioned, and a whole series of zombie-focused actual plays, I mentioned that I reached out to Free League to send over a review copy for this book, and told them what it was going to be about, showed them my channel, gave them my address, etc. and so forth, and it took a while for them to come back, which is actually a common theme in this story. And I heard from somebody called James, who was very kind and polite, said, yeah, sure, we can send that over to you. And then there was nothing for quite some time, and I just sort of let that sit at the back of my head for a little bit as I carried on with other bits of content, preparing for these solo zombie actual plays, and a whole host of other things. Then a couple of months passed, and I then realised that the book and Games Master screen haven't arrived yet. And I think, oh, well, maybe it could be like a shipping thing, because stuff just takes a long time to get over. Well, no, because Free League actually are based in Stockholm in Sweden, and that actually should have been here within a few days. So I'm a bit confused now, and quite frankly a little irritated. So I sent a polite email, I said, hey, is there any update about what all this is? A little bit later, I hear back from James again, saying that basically they hadn't shipped it over because the Games Master screen was out of stock. Now, I don't know how communication in that sort of field works, but I find that a little annoying that they didn't send out the order that they said they were going to 2 months prior because it was incomplete. Like, they could have sent a message, hey, this is out of stock, do you want us to send over the book now and you can get the Games Master screen later? Which is what they did, but I had to chase up what was going on, which I find a little frustrating. But as I said, they did do that. I said, yeah, that would be great, thank you, but would that mean, like, I'll be opting out of getting a review copy for the Games Master screen, or would I be getting it later on? A week later, I get no response, so I then just follow it up again, and then another week passes, or 6 days, because I'm getting quite impatient by this point, and I decide just to opt out of the thing completely and just find a copy of the core book and the Games Master screen from a sale on eBay, and just tell them not to bother. So that's just what that is. So I spent a good 50-ish quid that I really didn't want to spend, but I'm prepared to spend, because I had hoped and expected I would get a review copy from Free League, which is also frustrating because practically every review I would see on YouTube of the core book or the starter set or whatever, it would either be people who had got like the big old Kickstarter bundle when it came out, or people who were sent over review copies. So I don't know if it's something to do specifically with me, or Free League have a reputation for being like this, but it sort of soured my appreciation of this company that's supposed to be like really big and professional. But hopefully that was just like an off day, and if there's anything like this that happens in the future, I can have some better luck next time. But it has sort of like marred my feelings with them a little bit, so not the end of the world, because I've still managed to get my hand on this hopefully lovely core book and Games Master screen. And the reason why I want the Games Master screen with this is because I hope to run it for some people, because when I do book reviews, I have a very stern rule that unless I use it for like a video for a podcast episode or lore dive for the World of Darkness stuff that I usually do. So if you're new to the Lore by Night, hi, I'm a horror guy that does a load of TTRPG stuff regarding the World of Darkness and of course other horror goodies. I have a general rule that I have to run it or use it in some form or another, and I like having the Games Master screens when I'm running games. I just find them a core part of the game, and just like to see how it all connects all together. So enough waffling, I'm going to get my trusty box opening knife. Well, I usually just tear into the box, to be honest, but given the Walking Dead and zombies and all the rest of it, I thought just using a standard butcher's knife would be quite funny. So let us see how we can get into this box rather delicately with an oversized knife. There we go, that's quite nice. Hopefully I don't cut anything. There's always that issue when, even with the finest of knives, I'm not happy with that, so I'm just going to tear that a little bit more, just to break that up a little bit. Oh, it's got all those fucking polystyrene peanuts in it. Ugh, I fucking hate those. Do you just hate polystyrene? Like, let me know in the comments below if you just fucking hate polystyrene. So if I wasn't clear before I like pull all the bits out of the box, this video is going to be of two parts. It's going to be the unboxing stuff that I'm currently getting distracted with, and then the next part is going to be like the full review of me running the game for some people. The exception to that being is that I know, because I've looked at the PDF already, that The Walking Dead actually has some solo rules, so you can play The Walking Dead Universe RPG by yourself, and that's going to be in that first video that I mentioned, you know, the one that appeared in the card up there. So if you want the full Walking Dead Universe experience on Lore by Night, check out both videos. And I don't usually break things up this way, but I want to, you know, I know these videos aren't going to do very well, like logistically, so you're going to have to watch both of them so I can just watch the videos. Anywho, I don't want to get all these fucking peanuts on the floor because they're just a fucking bitch to tidy up. But I have to say, whoever the seller is, they've done a good job like wrapping it up. I'm going to have to lift this in a bag sort of thing. Oh, Applying some stress dice to the scenario. Okay, we're making this work, it's making it work. Okay, most of them just congregated on the top like so. Just brush those in there. Lovely stuff. Any fall on the floor? Not that I can see. So we're just going to very gently move the box over there. We've got all this like wrapping paper shit here. I'm going to put the knife over there as well. And we can begin to unwrap the bastard now. Or tear into it. Okay, so here we are. You know, I've never been so excited to have anything zombie related in my possession. Because it's just tied into making content. I'm like addicted to making content on YouTube. I jest, of course. Anyway. So, let us have a look at the core book first. The Walking Dead Universe Role-Playing Core Rules. Looks very nice. Got a couple of dents in there. I put that down to a packaging thing. No bookmark, not that's the end of the world. I just sort of expected it. It's a bit frayed there, but it looks like it's stitch bound. And there's the Games Master screen all wrapped up, and it's laminated with a little bit of card thing or whatever inside. We'll have a look at that as well. But for the time being, let us read off the blurb of the core rules. This is the Walking Dead universe role-playing game. The Walking Dead has always been about characters facing impossible choices in an unforgiving world. With this game, you enter the world of the dead and must face these choices head-on. You can do this at any point in the timeline, encountering familiar faces and locations, or new ones, but the hardest choice will always be the same. Who are you going to be? Now, for full disclosure, I haven't actually seen The Walking Dead TV show or read the comics, nor have I played any of the video games. I'm actually going to be doing a Let's Play soon of the Telltale's Walking Dead game, because I think that's going to be the most comfortable for me to experience. So I will have a bit more experience as time goes by, but as of the recording this particular segment, I don't know a lot about The Walking Dead. We've seen many stories set in The Walking Dead. Now it's time to see yours. In the official The Walking Dead universe role-playing game, what a fucking mouthful that is, you will play as people struggling to survive in a hostile world. Exceptional challenges can appear from anywhere, from the lack of essential supplies, from conflicts brewing within the group, from hidden construction flaws in your safe haven, or from approaching walkers hungering for your flesh. In the game, the player characters must not only hone their skills, their physical skills, but to deeply explore who they truly are. What drives them to go on? What do they consider worth fighting for? And what are they capable of doing in the best and worst of times? Expect the stress and stakes to be high. The rules are based on the acclaimed Year Zero engine, pushing the boundaries of the survival genre and making sure that every group can tailor the game and experience to suit their own interests and play style. And I should also mention, actually, with the mention of the game system, I'm vaguely aware of it. You roll d6s, you're looking for 6s. Essentially, it's a pooled dice system. This is my first time experiencing what's it called? The Year Zero engine. And it's my first Free League game, that is if you're not including Merkborg, but that's publisher. Anyway, first true Free League game, also my first encounter with them too, so hopefully themes will pick up as we go on. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in this and like to properly explore all the rules and the solar stuff. And just to open the back cover, we have Northeast Georgia. And she will surely be on my mind. And same map on the front cover as well. From what I recall, the game has like a couple of scenarios or part of a scenario in 2 different places, and I think it would be nice if there were 2 different maps. But anyway, that full review will be happening later in this video. Beautiful quality, really nice, not quite magazine glossy, but it's not far off. The artwork is just fantastic, and it's got that like really nice inky fresh TTRPG book smell. Lovely stuff. Damage and healing. Of course I'm going backwards, so I'm a sort of backwards individual. Oh, it's just lovely stuff. Like, I'll just show you. Actually, I probably won't show you that one because YouTube won't like me showing some guts and gore. Oh, it's fucking upside down. Fuck it. We'll just go with the risk of it. Like, it's beautifully illustrated. Like, not quite realistic, but very artistic, borderline impressionistic in places. You know, to get all fancy-pantsy with it. I just think it's a really neat style that just conveys like a story-esque element to it. And of course, it's a game that focuses more on the storytelling of the humans. I think that's quite appropriate. I just think it's a very gorgeous style. Just wish it didn't. Oh, that's quite. Oh, that is quite the little bump. I don't know how well that's going to show. I'm not doing a good job. There we go. Like, that's quite the little dent there. Not have too much of an issue there because it's still very much in a good nick. So, a great front cover as well. Just, I really like the artwork. It's pretty cool. Pretty neat. So with that out of the way, let's just have a look at the Games Master screen and have to see what that looks like. I'll move Nick's Walking Dead universe on there. Grab the knife back just so we can cut into the cellophane a bit more. What's the best way of doing this? I think just doing a little cut there. Oh yeah. I'll drag my finger down it. No, I cannot. I have to do a little more. Just maybe not doing it there. I feel there's going to be like some fucking purist like, no, you don't want to do it like that. You need to do it like this. Blah, 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 blah. That's fine. Also, I'm doing it quite risky with a knife that can cut through bone. We live on the edge here at Lore by Night. Ah, there we go. Just cut right down the middle of it like that. This is where I found out that I fucking cut it in half. Let's just get all that squeaky cellophane away here. Let's just unravel that. I also mentioned I don't have any of the other paraphernalia for it. I don't have the starter set, and I don't have the special dice for that. I've just bought some different kind of D6s, black and red, to fit with the game line. So we've got like that. That doesn't have anything on the back of that. Oh, it does actually say on the front, a Games Master screen in landscape format for the official Walking Dead universe role-playing game. It features Martin script art on the outside. Oh, okay. Mon. Pretty stellar artwork you got there. On the outside, and a host of useful tables on the inside while keeping the Game Master's plans hidden from the eyes of inquisitive players. You don't really need a Games Master screen to have players like work out what the fuck you're doing. I don't need that anymore, so I can just fuck right off. Okay, there's a bit of cellophane that's just got attached to my groin. The fucking slut! Okay, oh, this feels nice. Kind of cardy, but not quite matte. Actually, I'm feeling it. It's like a very thick cardboard. Landscape, got close combat weapons, ranged weapons, threat levels, messing up in combat, swarm size, presumably for the walkers as they're called. See, I do know a little bit about The Walking Dead after all. Swarm attack animals, walker attack on a D66 table, which means is that you roll 2d6, but you treat them as like tens and units rather than separate numbers. So if you roll, let's say, a 2 and a 4 on a d6, you treat that as 24. And in that example, it would be, for a walker attack, you jump to get away from them. Make a mobility roll. If you fail, you fall and take 1 point of damage. NPC reactions, crash objects, critical vehicle damage, walker wounds, and walker past. Interesting. Alright, so I'll just give that a little flick around. You've already had a little tease on the front cover, but it kind of looks like that. Nothing too impressive. No artwork. It's obviously got like the similar sort of like, if I bring that forward a little bit, like gritty, sort of dirty artwork of years gone by sort of thing. Okay. So I'm just looking outside now, just to have a proper look, and we'll do like a panorama thing in a moment with my phone, but you'll get a proper look at it without a fucking microphone in the way. But one thing I find is a little unusual is that the Walking Dead universe, wouldn't that make sense to put that in the center screen? So like you got that dude there with the axe, like if I just try and lift it up, surely that should just like fit. Trying to get the glare out of the way, it's not really working. That'll do. That'll do. Like, wouldn't it make sense to put like the logo there and just, yeah, that just sort of worked really well. But clearly, someone, someplace, somehow said, no, we can't cover up the artwork. We've got to put it there. But yeah, that's not a bad little sturdy screen overall. Like, it's the thing with landscape screens is that not too high. So whilst it does like hide your different notes from the rest of the table, it's not so high that you're like potentially like hiding from the players. Like you're hiding your notes, but the players like can still see all the different chuckle fucks that are going on. Really. So yeah, I quite like that. That's a very sturdy little thing. It looks like it's got all the right bits and pieces on there. Obviously, I'll probably need to have some additional notes as well, which is going to be the case of any games master that's going to be running this. But yeah, it's very clean. It's easy to read. It's got relevant information on there. I quite like that. That is pretty neat. It's a very sturdy little cardboard little thing. And can I fold this the right way this time? No, I cannot. I say because I did a separate video about how to run the Fallout TTRPG, which is going to be up there somewhere, and I folded the Games Master screen the incorrect way that way. So it's like USB sticks. You can never do it right the first time round. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Here we have the Walking Dead universe book and the Games Master screen. As I said, I have no experience about the Walking Dead universe, but I have seen a fair amount of zombie films to call upon for inspiration. Hopefully I'll be able to play more of the Walking Dead Telltale game fairly soon, so have a bit more of an understanding what makes that particular universe of zombies stand out a bit more. But I'm getting from the tables in here some of the things that I was reading the blurb and like flicking through. It's very much a people-centric thing, and I do know that with the Walking Dead TV show that it started out particularly strong, and then from a whole host of production things like changing directors, it got very weird and shit. So that's been a bit of a hesitant thing for me at this point, like watching it, and there's a fly that's joined us, the little cheeky cunt. So I know bits and pieces, but like I couldn't tell you anything about the characters. Well, Norman Reedus is in it, that's the thing that sort of made him blow up. But yeah, nothing about... But anyway, I'm excited to enter the Walking Dead universe via the official TTRPG. And going to be doing some solo stuff, as I've already mentioned. We're going to appear as some playlist stuff at the end of the video. And I'm also going to be running it for some people as well. And this video isn't going to be covering about what I did, like how I put the game together. I mean, I'll talk about the scenario in my review a bit, but it's going to be more about how I found the rules, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and what it's like to run. Hi, Future Lore here, currently reading the solo rules for the Walking Dead RPG. The evening that I recorded that video, I had received an email from James once more, kind of like they heard the fact that I produced that video. I'm joking, of course. And they, said that they were sorry for all the frustrations and all the rest of that diplomatic PR stuff. But the book had been shipped, so I may end up with 2 copies of the book now, and if that's the case, I'll post a picture of it there. It's not going to look any different, of course, and they offered if there was anything else that I may want, to review instead, and and such issues are rare, but they can happen, etc. and so forth, which is fair, I suppose, and I'm glad that eventually he replied to me, but everything else still stands, to be honest, because I still had to chase up a lot of what was going on. I was still left in the dark for a lot of it. So yeah, whilst this may be rare occurrences, it has sort of still left that sour taste in my mouth, because I don't know why it was just so difficult just to keep me up to date with things, and regardless of the size of the company, I just think it's a tad unprofessional. Although they were still keen of wanting to see the videos I did for this, which was nice, I suppose, but I don't suppose this particular review's going to sit well, but it's not like I didn't try. So anyway, back to the rest of the video. So a lot has developed since I recorded the last portion to this video, which is basically everything where I've had a fuller and thicker beard. I have played all the Telltale Walking Dead games from start to finish. I have read all 193 comics of The Walking Dead, the review for which is going to be up there somewhere now. It's going to be the best 3 hours of your life. And also, more importantly for this video, I have run The Walking Dead TTRPG, and I've done some solo stuff with it as well, because remember, The Walking Dead TTRPG has some dedicated solo rules, so I feel I have a bit more authority now to be giving my thoughts and opinions to you about it, rather than just relying on what's in the core book here. And to that end, I think we should start having a look at the core book in question. And I have to say, excluding the AMC logo that's on there twice, I think it is an absolutely gorgeous cover. It really sets the tone about what you're going to find inside. This is The Walking Dead. The zombies rule. The survivors on their last legs with katanas, bows and arrows and guns and whatever. I think that's Rick there, because he's got a little saw thing there. Not that he has that in the comics, mind you. He's got these little metal fingers sort of thing, but given the fact it's like an amputee hand sort of thing, I'm going to assume that's Rick Grimes. Again, I have not seen the TV show. But you've got this horde of zombies down here that's sort of very impressionistic. The whole thing all the way through is a very strong impressionistic art style, and if you don't know what that fancy word means, it creates the impression of a particular scene, person, subject, whatever. It was found a lot in the early mid 20th century in France, so Monet is a good example. And when we're talking about impressionistic artwork, you've also got Claude Debussy, which is an example of an impressionistic composer, but this is all a conversation for another time. Not so strong of a back cover, but having it just plain black with the text works just as well here, I think. And again, we have to have the AMC logo printed down the back, just in case you weren't aware that this is based purely on their TV show and not the comics and the video games, which I think is somewhat of a misstep, just because I actually find the video games and the comics a lot more interesting than the first episode of The Walking Dead, which is all that I've watched, admittedly, but as we'll soon find out, I think it's going to be a bit of a crutch that it's going to be leaning on more than anything else. But that being said, I'm very glad that Free League were able to get their hand on this property to create this TTRPG, because I think it's a very engaging setting, and I just would love to do something with The Walking Dead. So I'm just very happy that I can use a dedicated system for that, rather than hodgepodging some other zombie TTRPGs for that. When you open up the book, you've got two maps. You've got a map of northeast Georgia, and then you open up at the back and you've got, oh, look at that, northeast Georgia again, which is bizarre because we're going to find a completely separate map inside for a completely different setting. And I thought it would have made a lot more sense, okay, we're going to have one map there and a separate map there. It's just a weird design choice, I feel, or at the very least they could have done the whole Morkborg thing and present the rules on the covers like that, because there really isn't a lot to this game, but we'll talk about the rules and mechanics as we get to it in the book. There's a couple of little oddities of its presentation that I find a little grating as well, one of which I find more annoying than the other, and I'll start with that one. And it's the fact that the book makes constant mentioning of going to purchase the starter set and or the special dice, which is a D6, but some of the numbers have been replaced by special symbols, which can also be found in the starter set. And I'm not entirely too sure why, if someone wants to play the game but has just avoided the starter set because, I don't know, they've heard about it, they've read about it, they want to give it a go, and they've just gone straight to the core book, which you've probably seen with it sitting here in my hand. It's not the biggest core book in the world, which might be little red flags to some people, especially with how expansive the Year Zero engine is, which we'll talk about more in a moment, or they may be under the illusion that quantity equals quality, so they might just feel a bit odded out by that sort of thing, and then having this constant mention of purchasing the starter set, which may create the impression there's some rules or something is missing. I just find it annoying because you're demanding I go and buy other bits and pieces. That creates the impression that either you're not going to get the full experience unless you buy this other big box, which is not that far off from the actual core book, or, and this is perhaps the most judgmental tinfoil capitalist head speaking, you kind of made this at a loss, even though the Kickstarter did really well. Maybe upon release it didn't generate as much buzz or excitement as you would have hoped, so you're trying to get people to make money that you lost something. That could just be me being really harsh here, but once is more than enough. Like, you don't need to keep hammering on about it. Like, it worked because I bought the starter set, but it's not going to work with everyone else, and I think it's just a little jarring, honestly, especially in a game where resources are scarce, you know. And the other thing is that a feature that explained pretty early on in the book is that you'll find constant of these dearly departed monologues, which is something that the player can do at the beginning of a session, usually if someone has died or something dramatic has happened, where they can recount in character something that happened, or they give a dearly departed monologue for somebody who's died, to gain a bit of experience points, which on their own as little microfictions are really engaging to read to begin with, but it gets a little annoying when they're just dotted about everywhere when I'm just trying to read the rules and I don't really care much about these fictional characters that you've put in here, or adopting one from the TV show. It's a little odd, although that being said, I do like it that constantly throughout the book you have these made up group of characters that's a constant example in play things, or when a new rule is introduced, you present an example with some characters that are playing the game, which I think is really nice. It's a very organic way of teaching and showing people how to play and run the game. It's nice. I appreciate it, even though the Walking Dead game in of itself is not a very difficult game to play. If this is your first time playing with a TTRPG, or this one specifically, and it's a new engine and all the rest of it, it's just a nice little entry level thing to get people to feel more comfortable about dying horrifically by zombies. In fact, the first chapter of the book actually starts with an example in play, and if you read it as I did, because it's the first thing that you would see as you turn onto that page, it gets a little jarring because they start throwing the technical jargon about that I have not read before, because this is my first time reading the book, so that was a little bit of an unusual thing. But as well as highlighting the fact that these sort of things are going to be happening constantly throughout the book, it also is a great way to set the tone of what a typical Walking Dead campaign might look like, just from the language that the characters are using, and just how into the session they are, and just also how firm the game's master is in the scenario is. They're not really holding back any punches, but they're also fair. So I think actually a simple way of putting it is that they're firm but fair. But as for the chapter proper, it's a small chapter, as all the chapters are in the book, which is a virtue of that book being as small as it is. But this chapter doesn't feel particularly small because it's really packed with a lot of information. It's sort of the usual: what is an RPG, what's a games master, what's players' responsibilities, and that's sort of highlighted beautifully in the principles of the game sidebar on page 12. I would reprint it on the screen, but I think it's just better for you just to go and have a look at it yourself, because I do ultimately think this is a very enjoyable game, and it sort of highlights basically what is and isn't expected of everybody. What does the games master do, what do the players do, what does everybody else do, what you should and shouldn't do, and to break it down in these really simple 12 points is pretty cool. And I think games should be a lot more straightforward about what's expected of people when they play, especially in a horror game scenario like this. However, one thing it doesn't do too well, and I actually think it's a tad disrespectful, is how it presents the safety tools. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Some of you have even turned off at the whole mentioning of safety tools, and some of those on the right wing side of things might have been a bit triggered by the mentioning of safety tools and how I'm removing your amendments of free speech and all the rest of it. Now, if that sort of thing does apply to you and you don't really give a fuck, fine, there are groups out there for you, but there's a lot of people where the mentioning and the discussion of safety tools is really important, just for the company, developers, whatever, to acknowledge that these things to a lot of people are important, and some people may not be aware of them, and it sort of reassures a lot of people that if you go in there that there should be some degree of safety to what's going on, so you're not going to have like one of those weird scenarios where a games master is going to randomly make half the cast preggers because of some weird fetish that's going on. That the discussion of safety tools, or basically some form of conversation, should happen of like what isn't okay, and here are some ideas to run away with. Only this tiny little sidebar just makes allusion to a couple of the tools that are in here, and then goes tell people to go and look up online, which, yeah, fair, like the people who are playing this game are going to be adults, but the very least that you could have done is like, okay, go and you should research what works and don't work for you, but here's some good starting places, here's how they work, here's where they come from. This doesn't do any of that. It just mentions them and just goes and tells you to go and research it, which honestly feels really fucking lazy, and it just feels like to me that this was just a checkbox exercise so you don't piss off the persistently online Twitter liberals who would like raise pitchforks and arms the fact that this thing wouldn't be included in a game like this. So it's just a bit odd that that wasn't expanded more, at the very least provided some useful tips and helped, or provide somewhere in the appendix for it. But I suppose on the plus side, the fact that it is mentioned right in front up within the first few pages of your book is something to be applauded, because a lot of game books don't do this, because I feel a lot of people will just like skim past it or not read it, or feel that they know everything about it, and you know, just stuff like that. And it's just nice that Free League did put that information at the front for people to acknowledge, but it's really annoying they didn't do much with it. Like, why? The chapter also has a bit of a primer on the Walking Dead universe lore and setting, I suppose, and I refer to the Walking Dead universe because that's the term that they use here within the TV show, so it doesn't really include the comics, and it doesn't really refer to the Telltale games, which is a bit frustrating, but it's strictly talking about the TV show. But there's no reason why you could lean towards the tone of the comics or lean towards the tone of the Telltale games if you want, especially when all three of them focus around Atlanta quite a bit, and it actually the book assumes that Atlanta, Georgia is the default setting, hence the maps and the scenario example towards the back of the book. It's rather nice actually that the book discourages players and the games master to include the TV show characters, because it sort of like lessens the overall feel and the horror things a bit more, and which is great advice. Like something like Vampire the Masquerade, where it has a lot of canonical meta plot characters that you could pull and drag in, it sort of like lessens the horror a little bit, becomes like TV show star of the week, like just showing up in a little campaign sort of thing, which is great advice. Unless you don't have a look about what the starter set does and what that includes. And literally when you turn the page after you've been told about this, it immediately encourages you to do that, as it starts talking about its two modes of play, which is campaign and survival mode. Now, campaign mode is intended for larger campaigns that either you keep on playing until it feels finished, which is the free play mode, or you have the season play, which has a number of sessions of parts and it is predetermined, which is odd. And then you have the survival mode, which is basically 1 or 2 sessions with pre-generated characters where your cast may meet the TV show characters. I don't know why Free League decided to break up essentially one-shots and campaigns like this. I don't know if that was like a weird demand by AMC Publishing to like separate the differences between the two, but that is such a bizarre way of presenting things. And particularly with the fact that survival mode, as described later on the book, is like more or less going to be like scenarios that Free League will put out for people to run, where you have pre-generated characters that consist of the TV show characters. But to my knowledge, that hasn't happened yet, unless it's part of those special events that you can sign up for and run on behalf of Free League. But it's a bit weird, and this is going to keep coming back in this review, because the more it happens, the more annoyed I get when I'm reading this. The second chapter is all about the main setting of The Walking Dead, like the outbreak, how it happened, how nature's taken over control, how walkers work to a little bit, how society's trying to rebuild itself, and it's a nice little primer if you're not familiar with The Walking Dead. And I read that in this book before I actually read the comics and had a full of experience with the video games. I did a fair amount of the video games as I was reading this, but it was through the comics that I was able to appreciate the setting a lot more. And as somebody that has come into this reading that setting for the first time, it does help to establish a firmer understanding about what makes The Walking Dead stand out a little more from other zombie media, that it's not so much action focused, it's very much a drama, but it's got zombies hanging around in the background, which I feel that its main zombie mechanics works really well to an extent, but it's just interesting to note that if you're coming into The Walking Dead via the TTRPG, it's a great way to introduce you to the setting. However, as much as I applaud it wanting to discourage the group from using metagaming, which is basically using outsider knowledge to determine or work out things that's happening there because of the unreliable nature in which information is passed about through different groups, it would have been nice if a little timeline of sorts was like set up, like the outbreak began on this day this happened, etc. and so forth, which again I understand because that would mean that we're following through like the main group that we see through the TV show and the comics, or I'm presuming it's the same group, as I know there's some characters that are unique to the TV show and some die when they're not supposed to, etc. and so forth, but just a little bit of information just to try and work out what was going on, so Games Masters could have like an understanding and an idea about at different points in the outbreak, like when certain groups of people come along, etc. and so forth. You know, just a little bit of a just a little smidge would have been nice. Chapter 3 is all about character creation, and I think it's an incredibly simple character creation process, unless you're one of the sorts of people that comes up with a whole thesis of their backstory. It shouldn't really take you more than half an hour to do, like, very simple maths involved, a little bit of page flipping about as you move from one chapter to the next to find out what certain skills and talents do, but beyond that, it's a fairly straightforward thing, and I think it works best if you don't put too much thought into it and overcomplicate things, especially with a game like this where your character can like drop dead at the drop of a hat, or a particularly unfortunate dice roll, which is something I will talk about later on in this review. But there are some niggles with it that I think makes the more mechanical uniqueness of character creation inherently pointless. I'll start off with the most obvious one, is that when you're creating your character, you put 13 points into your character's attributes, but the text says that you have to have a minimum of 2 across all of them. So you don't actually have 13 points to spend, it's more like 5. Because everything has got to be... Like, why not just say you start your points off at 2 and then you add such and such to fill the rest out? Like, that just seems a bit weird. Like, World of Darkness has been doing this for, like, well over 30 years. Everybody gets 1 dot of something and then you just add a certain number to them. I mean, there's the exception with some of the fugly ones where they don't have any dots in appearance, but that's not too difficult to do. Like, you're given the illusion they actually have more points to play with when actually they don't. The other major gripe I have, mechanically speaking, is the archetypes, which is essentially the different roles of the TV cast and of course the comics and the Telltale games take up during the existence of that bit of media. So you've got like a scientist, the soldier, the outcast, the nobody, the preacher, the politician, the farmer, and there's a couple other ones that I've forgotten at the moment. But my favourite one out of them actually is the kid, and I really appreciate and respect Free League including kid characters into this, although mechanically they're just as fragile as everybody else, or just as strong as everybody else I should say, because there's often this illusion that kids in horror are like holy and now innocent creatures and no harm can come to them. Well, in the Walking Dead comics there are multiple kids that died and babies get fucking blown up in one point. I actually did a whole video talking about this sort of issue within horror, which is going to appear in a video up there for you to go and watch, but I like it the fact that Free League weren't prepared to avoid those conversations, actually encourage people to play them, and that these sort of characters should have a place in horror stories, so that's pretty neat. It just gets pretty annoying that with each of these archetypes you've got like talents that you choose that basically add certain modifiers when you do specific actions with specific dice rolls. Although that being said, most of your rolls are going to be either scout or survival because they're a little bit overblown and fucking out of proportion. But then when you go into expend experience points in future sessions, you can choose any of the talents from any of the archetypes and a bunch of general ones, which sort of lessens the importance of those archetypes being a thing, which I suppose to an extent makes a bit of sense, because you've got somebody from the comics of Angela, who was like an office clerk, and by the end of it she becomes one of the best fucking shooters within the whole franchise, like an excellent sharpshooter with a sniper rifle. So you've got that, but a lot of the characters do stay within their like fields of expertise and blossom from that. I don't really think that, unless the players are really wanting to be dedicated with that bit of role playing, there's not much within the character creation process that properly supports the concept that you've chose, even with a bit of flavor text that comes after every single talent that you can choose from, both the general and the one relying on the specific archetypes. There's not much that supports that, and there's even the bit of text in the book that says, oh, you can choose anyone you want providing that you have a reason for it. So a games master that doesn't have a good grip on a group would just allow all sorts of shit to happen because somebody could just have the most ridiculous idea, but oh, it's in my character's backstory, I can definitely make that happen. Like, come on guys, I know that this game is like a bit loosey-goosey with its rules and it encourages that, which is a really great thing, but we need to be a bit firmer here with like the core component of character creation, like the archetype, you know, the thing that makes them unique, that has all the mechanical crunch in there. Yeah, I know it doesn't have a load of powers, it doesn't have any powers really, but can we do something a bit more, please, to make our characters feel a bit more unique, other than relying everything on the players to do all the role-playing? This even makes less sense if you choose to have an archetype-less one and you can just choose whatever the fuck you want. And I feel that issues and drives is a particularly inherently redundant thing as well, which is a little role-playing mechanic that the drive is what basically drives you forward during the apocalypse. Like, basically, what is it that you're living for? And the issue is like some sort of secret that should be introduced in the game somehow, like a little problem or secret, well, an issue that if discovered or isn't addressed, it's going to cause a lot of harm to people. So an example from the comics would be is that Laurie is pregnant, because giving birth to a baby during an apocalypse could be a huge issue. From Telltale Games, the character of Ben has the issue that he was giving medicines to a group of raiders, and that came to an head because it wasn't properly addressed and like just caused most of the fucking plot to happen, for example. And I like it that it encourages players to come up with like these massive social, mental, emotional flaws about them, but they don't offer much in terms of mechanics that doesn't cement them being important. Again, it's a very much a role-playing thing that's everybody has to keep a lid on, which on the one hand I can respect, but it'd be nice if there was like a nicer balance between the mechanics and the role-playing, just making the two meet together. Like, there's some fail states in the game where you fail a particular role, or you're shattered or frightened or whatever, and you get a new issue or drive relating to that, which is great. But regarding the ones that you've established through the game, there's not much. The chapter ends on like the main issue that I have, and it's not really part of character creation, but it's included within the character creation chapter, because The Walking Dead is all based around survivals of humans and building a community, and you establish a haven. Further down the line during play, you like establish like projects like farming and doing beehives and like building up like your property or haven just to make it like a proper community and keep things safe, which is very bare bones and minimal, I have to say. But one of the things that you do with that is you decide on a group of NPCs who accompanies you, like it's part of your community. Now, the rules as written states that you have to choose these 5 predetermined characters that's in the book, that you have to choose those specific 5s and do your own thing with them, or if you don't like them, you can go further down in the book and like roll on a d6 table and choose a different group of 5. Which is such the cack-handed way of making your players care for the NPCs around you and the general world around you. Yeah, it requires a bit of legwork to get the players like to care for each other and like for the world, and you know, doing their best not to die and to look out for each other or like stab each other in the back. Because a lot of the examples actually have like the players betray each other, like push each other in front of zombies to protect themselves, which I really applaud, but I don't think a lot of player groups are going to be doing that for one reason or another. That's just an accident waiting to happen, but whatever. Like, so the idea is that when you die, you then take up the mantle of one of these NPCs, but why do I care about these chuckle fucks that have been decided for me? I mean, sure, that's then for you to decide with your group, but why not have something that like Werewolf the Forsaken does, where when you make your character, you make another person of your pack. A werewolf game, obviously. It doesn't have, and with that game, it doesn't have to be a werewolf. It could be a human. It could be another supernatural creature, like a vampire or a changeling. But I would have thought that would have made a lot more sense with something like this. That you as a group would like sat down, like, okay, this person is connected to me because that person's connected to you like such and such. And you just work out as a group, like build a bit of a relationship map and work out how everyone's all connected, how you all met. And it's actually what I did when I run The Walking Dead, because I think that makes a lot more sense than just say, hey, you care about these 5 people now. These people are important to your life. Unless it's for like an actual adventure or module, which, again, that only covers one of its 2 play styles, I don't see why I can't make my own. I can't see why I could encourage my players to come up with like an NPC or 2 that they should care about that's part of their backstory. I mean, for fuck's sake, we are in the whole thesis comment I made a moment ago. So many players come up with so many different characters connected to their character that they want to introduce. I don't see why Free League could have missed all of that, but it's something that I've experienced a lot with a lot of American players, a lot of British players. Even so, like, why Free League? This is such a weird way of making me care for the world you're trying to establish here. Chapter 4 is all about the skills and talents, and also a bit of information on the abilities as well, or tributes. I've actually forgotten what they're called, but what they all do, the sort of roles you're going to make, and as I mentioned already, most of the roles that players are probably going to end up doing revolves around scout or survival. It's something that I noticed a lot during my short campaign event and some of my solo work. I can't quite remember the moment in the campaign that I did, but there was a moment where somebody wanted to do something, it didn't quite fit the exact criteria I was looking for, so I had to like improvise a little bit and like, oh, okay, we're just going to pretend it covers this sort of field. And I would encourage game masters not to be so rigid about the columns it's presented in the book. Like, by all means, swap things about if you feel the situation demands it. And it's the first time that we see something that's known as messing up, which is basically when you're rolling a 1 on a stress die, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But the book has this really cute / cheesy wording for it, and it's called rolling a walker. Which is funny because this is like the 1 of 2 times it mentions it. And what that basically means is, and I have to talk about the rules a little bit, which is actually mentioned at the beginning of the book, but I think it's more appropriate to talking about it here. As I mentioned already, this uses the Year Zero engine, which is basically you roll a bunch of d6s and you're looking for 6. Now, I am vaguely aware that it's a more revised, skimmed down version of the Year Zero engine, but I don't have a lot of experience with Free League games. I have some experience with Merkborg, but that's like an OSR thing, and Free League is only the publisher there, so I can't really comment too much about how that relates to other Year Zero engines, but as I'm aware of it, I thought it would just make sense to mention it here. And usually when you're rolling on some dice, you're looking for some 6s, but if you're not happy with the number of successes that you get, what you can do is pushing the roll, which I really like because it's more than just re-rolling your failures and hoping you get some successes. What that actually is that you have to give a reason and how you're like pushing yourself to do better. So I think the example that it uses in the book, like you're running away from some walkers or whatever, and you begin to climb a fence. You don't get enough successes, so you can push the roll, like to really climb over to make sure you don't get caught, sort of thing. Now, when you push a roll, you add a stress die to your standard roll. So it's unlike 5th edition Vampire where you replace your regular die with a hunger die, you add a stress die to what you're doing. So it makes it more likely for you to get successes, but it also is more likely for you to be rolling a walker, which is when you roll a 1 on the stress die. And if you roll a 1 on a stress die, what that means is that the threat level goes up. It's a maximum of 6, it basically introduces the more walkers you've got going on about. And it's really frustrating that the example that it gives you really relies on, oh, if you roll a walker, the most that's going to happen is that you get attacked by a walker. I think with a horror game where it actually gives you a means of playing kids, you could be a lot more fucking inventive with your examples. As we're talking about the rules, I think it makes sense for us to move on to the next chapter, which is all about combat and healing, but most of which is to do with combat, to be fair. And now everybody here is a glass cannon, because it doesn't matter how old, small, big, young, fit, whatever your character concept is, you're going to have 3 HP, and if you knock them down to 0, they become unconscious, and 1 more hit and you're fucking dead. Now, on the one hand, I find it a little bit confusing that you could have some characters that are bigger, more muscular, that may want an additional bit of HP here and there, and kids really should be a bit weaker than everybody else. But I think what they're trying to go with here, they being the developers of this game, is that everybody at the end of the day is a fragile human, and it just takes one blunder, one mishap, one poorly placed walker bite for everything to fucking be the end of you. And the walker, by the way, is the in-game word for the zombie. It's not something that's just relating to the TTRPG. It's something that's used within the TV show. I'm presuming because I never heard anybody use it within the first episode. And it's mentioned in the comics and the Telltale games as well. In fact, in the comics, the original source material for all of these things, Walker's only used twice. So I think it's really funny that everyone else just latched onto Walker a lot more. So you don't have to go with Walker. Of course, you can go with zombies, you can go for lurkers, you can go with leeches, reform voters, like whatever floats your goat, really. But it would have been nice if the option was there just to like have like a extra bit of HP or a little, like one less and one more sort of thing, just to reflect everybody who's like a little older, a little younger, just a smidge. It's a very minor thing, but I actually really like it that the players all are the same playing field, because anything can go wrong at any given time. And I can understand also why that sort of thing will be annoying to people, and how within the same chapter, when we're dealing with walker combat, which is different from regular combat between player and player or player and NPC, there are certain dice rolls when a walker attacks you where it just outright kills you in a bloody gory fashion, which I encourage games masters to play up as much as the group will allow them, and that's it, it's game over. And if that sort of thing bothers you, don't play a game about zombies where you may die really fucking quickly or become a walker. You know, like, you really kind of need to embrace the fact that your characters are going to die a lot and are going to be in a lot of pain. A lot. When I ran this, I had a couple of people who had to amputate body parts, or one of them had to amputate some toes, but one of them never got round to amputate another body part because in the next turn he had his face eaten off by zombies. But you really should be embracing the horror of that a lot more, and the games master should not be holding that back. Like, if they roll on that walker table and they have their neck chewed out and they die, they're fucking dead, because then that death means something. Like, the combat means something. They may well learn something from it, they being the players here. So I embrace it, for fuck's sake. Like, don't jump around with it a little bit. But with combat, it's fairly straightforward when you're talking about humanoid encounters. It's divided up into zones, and the game's master's encouraged to draw up a map of everything, which I really don't like, just because I'm a theatre of the mind person. I don't do with props and maps. I do acknowledge that there are going to be players and games masters who enjoy that element of things, and some may actually need that visual stimuli to understand what's going on. I forget the name of it. It's I think it's anesthesia or something like that, where you can't imagine things at all or particularly well. Like, if I told you lot to imagine a red apple, there's going to be some people that struggle with that. I struggle with it, and yet I cannot be bothered drawing up maps and doing minis. I already waste a lot of money on a very expensive hobby. I don't really want to be investing more time doing something like that. That, and something that I tend to observe from a games master and a player perspective, is that a lot of people just sort of turn off with the imagination, and it becomes a more tactical sort of thing, and the RP just goes down the shitter pretty quickly. But that's in my experience and my observation. So obviously, if you want to do something like that and want to lean into that a lot more, by all means, go ahead and do that. That's just something I don't particularly like, especially when the fact that the way that it describes combat, that you've got these different zones like long, medium, whatever, you can move from one zone to the next, and there's not like, oh, you can only move so much if you've got so many dots in that. It's like, no, you can move from one thing to the other, and it's presumed that you are using your melee weapon or your gun as you're doing so. So it's a bit weird that you've got the map to almost gridify things, and yet you've got these loosey-goosey theatre of the mind rulings here. I just think there's a bit of a conflict there personally. But the way that combat works is that you roll your dice pool, whether it's like a ranged weapon or a melee thing, depending on what the players are doing or the NPCs are doing, and whoever's got the more successes wins, and you only need to beat the person by one. But if you've got more successes than one, you add the additional successes to the attack, and each weapon has like a dedicated number of damage it does, and each weapon also has like a plus modifier to what you add to the roll before you're doing it. I believe, on the top of my memory, revolvers give you +2 to ranged weapon skills, and it does extra like 2 damage. So if you beat the enemy by 1, it just does the 2 damage. But if you got 2 successes, it does 3 damage, because you've got that extra success that adds on top of that, which means in that particular scenario you sort of KO'd somebody. They're now broken, and then you can heal them up with other bits and rolls you can go and read about at your own leisure. Now, walker combat, however, is a very different scenario, and it gets a little more complicated because you've got to like add up a swarm size, which is randomly determined, and the threat level. You add them together, and then the group has got to meet that number of successes to basically win the scenario. But it gets a bit more involved than that, because only 3 players in the group can focus at the walkers at any given time, and you've got less than that, then there's certain modifiers, negative modifiers that you add to the roll, by which that means you take away some of the dice. So you've only got 2, you have a -2 modifier, so you take 2 dice away, and if it's only just the one person, you take away 4 dice. And depending on the threat level, it dictates just how close the enemies are to you. So you could have like 5 zombies, but if it's a threat level 6, they're right up in front of your face, so it means that you can't do ranged combat with them. You can only be forcing them out of the way with a force roll, or close combat and punch them in the face. Now, the inverse of this is totally true. There could be 1,000 walkers into the distance, but if you have like a threat level 2, it means that they're there, but you can sneak past them, providing things don't get any worse for you. You should be safe. So there are different ways of handling the walker scenario within your own scenarios, providing the threat level is low enough. Now, with those 3 people that are attacking, let's say you've got like an additional 1 person, what the little mate here do like to try and help out? Well, they say what they want to do to help out, and then they can add a die, 1 whole d6 to the group of 3 who are dealing with the walkers. And you could argue that if there's like 2, then there's 2, etc. and so forth. But it can also spice up combat, because there could be a lot of walkers about, and you're fighting against some other NPC. So you have to choose which one you have to be dealing with here, which makes the combat a little complex at times, but it also, you know, adds some realism to the things, like which is the more important priority here, like what's more likely to kill you and cause a headache in the long run, which I really kind of like. I do have to say that if you treat the rules as written with like the walker table, which is like the D66 I mentioned, like with some of the results that can just kill you outright, it can be a little nonsensical, just because of the nature of random dice rolls. Like, say that you're fighting off a zombie and then against a wall, and then somebody comes up behind you. You could just obviously fiddle around with the narrative a bit more to make that sense, but it's just something to keep in mind, I suppose. The next chapter is a bit of a pants chapter, because this is sort of the main community focused chapter, you know, dealing with the NPCs that you care about, or in most cases those 5 predetermined ones you've had to ham-fist into the scenario somewhere. It has the whole building elements I talked about earlier on that feels a bit lackluster. There's this very weird / weak NPC training mechanic where you can increase like how capable NPCs are, and NPCs in The Walking Dead don't have proper stats as such. It gets the Games Master to roll a pool of 4 for basically everything. 6 if they're particularly good at it, or 8 if they're an expert. I believe that's the division. I might have just made that up, but I know like a base level it's 4 dice for everything, which I like because I'm a lazy games master that doesn't like to do handouts for every single fucking NPC and like generalize the sort of things I think that they can do. So I rather like that, and I think the reason why the book has that, because there's several points within the comics, and I'm presuming the TV show as well, where everybody's like working on their gun skills so they can like practice taking out walkers when that moment arrives, you know, so they're not too safe and coddled. But it just feels a bit weak just because of how bare bones everything is. Like, it again relies on everybody just to embrace the scenario and like engage with the role playing, which again is a bit difficult to do when you've just got these 5 predetermined characters. They've got nothing to do with the group, and it relies on the games master to do all the work to make all that work for everyone. The thing that really annoys me about this chapter is the focusing on maps, sort of like a weird hex crawl sort of scenario, where the players go out into the world and find materials, food, and other things that are worth scavenging, and they encourage everyone to move around on the map a little bit, which, again, I understand, but trying to simulate like the process of time, hunger, food, and all the rest of it. And then, as we'll soon find out, different factions and whatnot move around in seemingly random places. It just feels a bit fucking weak, honestly, and just feels like a weird board game, which is funny because there's something I've heard people complain about with Free League's Blade Runner game. So it just feels a bit out of place here, where again, you can't quite decide whether this is going to be a very granular moving in a grid system or just letting the narrative decide. They're trying to have the cake and eat it too. It's a little odd. For those of you who haven't been paying attention, the next chapter is going to be chapter 7, and it is the running the game chapter. And for those of you who have seen more than one book review of mine on this channel, you know that I typically enjoy the Games Master focused chapters the most, because I am the forever GM of most of these things, and I like that the authors of any bit of text can take all the core themes, emotions, ideas, and present them in a distilled manner, where the Games Master is encouraged to take all these different ideas and themes and have a load of suggestions and ideas of how to present the material to their game. I think, if done well, these are fucking fantastic chapters. This, however, is not one of those, and if anything, I find this the most frustrating chapter in the book, because it demands so much of the Games Master to enjoy what's really a very simple game, and I am just rather perplexed by some of the things it asks people to do, and how quickly it contradicts itself towards the latter parts of the chapter. I mean, it starts out fairly strong. It encourages the Games Master not to set up solutions but present challenges, which I think is a really great bit of advice, because it minimises the bad sort of railroading and like the weird you have to solve this puzzle by working together sort of element themes. It encourages the players to explore the world at their own pace, within their own style, and feel that there isn't a necessarily right or wrong way of doing something. And it also creates less work for the Games Master that said, okay, this is an issue, how do you go about solving it? So it makes the world a bit more believable and not so, well, badly railroady. But it then follows with a 12-step process of planning a campaign, which is like a really fucking weird railroading thing. And you're not supposed to be planning for a campaign, by the way. You know, beyond what I've just presented there. Like, it categorically tells you that you should not be planning for a campaign. What you should be doing is making these factions, up to 3 factions, which has its own process, which is decided mainly by dice rolls, which is so cack-handed, despite me loving random tables, but it seems so bizarre when the first thing you encourage the Games Master to do is to name the faction, when you haven't decided anything about them, and you're not allowed to plan about them anyway, because the game tells you you're not supposed to be planning for a campaign. Like, I'm sorry, what the fuck is this? How are you supposed to put together a faction but not plan for a campaign, because you have to consider how the faction is going to incorporate with the group? But that's probably why that when you move things about on your little map that you've made, that everybody moves around randomly, so you can't plan for those encounters to happen. Like, beyond the issues and drives of the players, what reason do they have to care for the world around them? Nothing. Because it's all very personal, very small and minute in this big old world. Like, I do believe that players should have something to be working towards beyond the simple rotation of use food, shoot things, defend ourselves, somebody dies, move around randomly, hex map crawling, rinse and repeat. It's like exploring an open world game with fuck all to do. It's like playing an Ubisoft game. It's like playing a post-main quest It's like playing Skyrim and you've done everything. Like, it's like playing Final Fantasy 15. You've got this big fucking huge map that you can explore on foot, but it doesn't make a lot of sense when you can just, like, hand wave the whole time process, like an X number of hours, you reach X point. Look, why are we not supposed to be planning things? Why are we this rigid about planning things, people? It's just weird advice. And it's just even more bizarre that you've got all these amazing tables to employ, like for different areas, food, items, whatever, that what you're supposed to do pretty randomly, like an old school D&D thing. You've got some example factions to include that, remember, you're not really supposed to be planning them, so I guess they're just a case study of what you could do, although the example factions themselves are pretty lackluster. I mean, they're interesting, but I expected a lot more, which is honestly a bit of a theme of the book as a whole. And I am just fucking perplexed by the 2-page spread that you have on the survival mode section. Because again, we have gone from don't put in the key TV characters, but then you have the next paragraph of that 2-page spread encouraging Games Masters to be doing that. And it is so bare boned and it's so minimum that I am just really fucking confused why you bothered including that at all. How is that any different from the main campaign stuff? It's honestly the main reason why I bought the starter set, because I had no fucking clue like what made survival mode so different and unique from the regular play. Not wanting to take that starter set module, the Wolf's Den, so literally, but if we take that as like the prime example, you leave them unfinished. Like, what's the function of it? There's like fuck all there. What makes this more frustrating is that the next chapter is an example campaign Atlanta, which has an additional map in it, which would have been nice in the back cover if you were going to repeat both maps, or you didn't want to do like having some of the rules in the core book thing. But then again, if you did that in the cover, you wouldn't have been able to sell the GM screen, I suppose. But anyway, it's baffling to me because you've got Atlanta as this example, and it says, oh, this happens after season 11 of The Walking Dead. Now, I don't know how many seasons there are. I know there's more than 10, and then you've got all these spin-offs as well. So basically, am I supposed to watch all 11 seasons? I nearly said series because I'm British and I'm trying to stick to their terminology here. But am I supposed to watch all 11 seasons of The Walking Dead to appreciate this very small part of this very small book here? How much of that does that tie into the various spin-offs that you have? Like, and The Walking Dead, like, episodes are like an hour long each. That's a huge fucking commitment. And it makes even less sense for anybody who's coming into this expecting something that was like the comics or the Telltale games. And honestly, if you went in that fucking direction, that would have been fucking fantastic. But the lack of a timeline just really shines through here, because okay, what happens in season 11? What makes it so different from season 1, from season 5, from series 6 and 9? You know, it would have been nice just to be told a little bit about what's happening, other than the main cast is fucked off but they're remnants of what they've done here. Like, what am I supposed to do with that bit of information? And it's really here that I really begin to understand, like, oh, you really don't want us to plan anything, because there's no motive, there's no operation. The NPCs have got issues and drives as well. Like, it's a big old sandbox sort of thing, and you're supposed to let the players run around and discover their own shit. Like, you really don't want people to plan anything. Which also provides a lot more legwork for the games master, because rather than highlighting a couple of these people to focus on, you present a load of them. You've got to remember all of them at once. You've got to remember all their issues and drives, or at least have a good like note-taking system in place for that. That's also on top of the fact that you've got your other 5 pre-generated NPCs. So if you've got a group of 5 people, there's like 15 people you've got to remember from the get-go, which is an insane amount of legwork, and it sort of goes against every single bit of games mastering advice that I have ever seen, like start small and expand, that you're starting with like an excess of 15 fucking people. It's a bit ridiculous, honestly, that how it contradicts itself so frequently, and yeah, it's just, what the fuck. Finally, we have the appendices, which has like basically a load of tables regarding like places, NPCs, walkers, which is honestly a lot more fucking useful than every other fucking random table that you've presented so far of like fucking world building. Like, you choose a haven at character creation, you've either got a car or this house or whatever it is. Like, you've got 2. But then in these tables, you've got a load of other fucking things to be rolling on, like, and like set dressing things. Like, there's a lot more information about how you could be dressing up individual walkers, so like to world build, like say that a character has, like, they're trying to find a particular NPC, like a lover or whatever. Let's say it's a scientist, and then they see that scientist with their clothes and glasses. Imagine what you could do with that. That's just an amazing bit of world building and a great bit of planning. That's why it's in the appendices, it's an afterthought. Like, there's so much information here you could be using to developing your world. Like, it could have been an earlier point in the book, But no, it's just sort of rammed back in the appendices for people to forget about. You also have the solo rules, and as I've already mentioned, or I might have mentioned, I don't actually remember, it's been quite a while since I've been working on this video, I'm not going to be talking about the solo rules here. That's going to be included in a separate video in my main MISSION Zombotch video, where we're going to be looking at a bunch of zombie TTRPGs and how they're helping me cure my mortophobia, as I'm going to be doing a lot of solo zombie stuff very soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that particular video, which will complete this video sometime in the near future. But overall, I really do enjoy this book. I know that I've complained a lot about its contradicting messages and its themes and all the rest of it. But when it comes to playing it, when it comes to be using the tools in that book to create a Walking Dead-like survival experience, I managed to have a lot of fun with it as a solo player, and I was also able to have a lot of fun running it as a games master. But it did require me to ignore pretty much all of the games master advice that it had in there and just pretend that survival mode wasn't a thing. That was either going to be running a one-shot or a campaign, or a shorter campaign that might be 2 or 3 sessions long, rather than just breaking it up with survival mode. All of which without even acknowledging the TV cast even existed. So if you're prepared to do that, you will have a lot of fun with The Walking Dead. But something I have noticed through all of this is that despite it being like a really easy game and a very stellar horror experience, is that I don't actually see a lot of love about this. All the sort of Reddit conversations I've seen about it have happened like months or years ago, as of the 2nd of September 2025, which is when I'm recording this particular segment, and thus all the other bits that have come before that over the last couple of months. There doesn't seem to be a lot of love for it, not just from the fans as well, but also from Free League. Like with the fans, I was trying to search up like a Discord dice bot to use with this, because some of the Free League games have their own dedicated dice bots that fans have made, because this uses a different dice type, and I would have thought that somebody would have made something like that, and there isn't. I had to learn a little bit about dice made and to know how to do separate dice rolls for it. There isn't any other adventures or materials that Free League have put out either. To my knowledge, at least. There might be some of the more private ones that I mentioned earlier on. Like, you make a huge thing about the survival modes being a thing, like introducing the key characters, but all that we have here is like the survival mode in the core book and the one in the starter set, which you have encouraged the readers to go and purchase lots of times, which has a very small selection of a hodgepodge of characters in that by themselves don't make a lot of sense and don't actually appear in the fucking module for the Wolves Den or the Golden Ambulance for that matter. Like, it's just sad. And despite raising so much money, there just doesn't seem to be much of interest for it, which kind of makes a lot of sense, because the Walking Dead TV show isn't as popular as it once was. It's still drawing in a lot of money for sure, but not many people seem to care about it anymore. Like, people also dropped off through season 6 and 7 because things started to go downhill from there. I don't know the reason for that. That's just something that I've seen come up a lot. It's either season 6 or 7 that people just stopped paying attention to the TV show. The Telltale games for The Walking Dead are not as big as they once were, and with a massive fart that was the 4th season, to most people at least, not many people were interested in that either. And the TTRPG coming out as sort of late into The Walking Dead hype, as it was, is a bit of a weirdly placed one. I obviously don't know the ins and outs about how that came about or who approached who, but it just seems that it's a bit of nothing, that there doesn't seem to be a lot of care for, when it's clear that a lot of care was put into like the presentation and the ideas for this. But people just don't seem to care all that much for it, which I find a little upsetting, really, because I personally have been really enjoying The Walking Dead as of late, and I would have just hoped that there would have been more love and attention for this, especially how big The Walking Dead was, and how, in relation to the other IPs that Free League has, it kind of dwarfs most of them. I mean, they've got Aliens, which is obviously a huge champion in that regards, but it's a shame. I just wish there was just a bit more love for it. But again, I will reiterate that there's clearly a lot of love that was put into this book, but I just expected more, and just hoped for more, and just hoped that there was just more of a conversation, more scenario modes out there, just more of something or anything to be excited about with the TTRPG, because, yeah, the most I see now is people just saying that, oh, you should just use The Walking Dead to do any old zombie thing, which, I don't agree with, honestly, because The Walking Dead is a particularly unique experience, and there are other zombie games out there that you could cater a lot more to what you're looking for here. But I do also understand where people come from when they say that, so it is what it is, I suppose. So that kind of wraps up this review here, and I should mention that as Free League did eventually send a review copy over, even though with all the waiting I just got a bit fed up of waiting and asked them to not bother. Thank you ever so much for sending over a review copy. With all the complications in communication aside, I will point out that this is not the copy that you sent over. I actually sent it over to a friend of the channel, Turk of the Grouch Couch, who does a lot of solo stuff and actually did a pretty cool solo The Walking Dead campaign on his channel. I will leave a link to his channel in the description below for you to go and check out. We've actually also done a couple things together. I know that he's been desperate to get his hands on the physical book and the Games Master screen, so yesterday, the 1st of September, I sent it over to him. So hopefully that will arrive to him all in one piece and he'll have lots of fun with that. But yeah, it's no longer in my possession, so yeah. It is what it is, I guess. So at least somebody was going to be getting it, and hopefully a good space of time. So enough little digs out of the way. What do you think of The Walking Dead TTRPG? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let's have a conversation with The Walking Dead all down and below. Now, if you do want to check out The Walking Dead and want to support your Lore Saviour, what you can do is purchase a copy of The Walking Dead and the starter kit via the links in the description below. Now, if you purchase them with those specific links, I get some of the money back because, as I said, I'm going to fill it on Drive-Thru-RPG, and that sort of coinage will help develop this channel and support your Lore and Saviour. And it's also really cool because it means that you get books and I get books and you get content for free. So really, the math is in your favour. But what if you got those books already and want to support me financially more or the same? What you do instead is copy the affiliate code in the description and paste it into the URL of any Drive-Thru-RPG project, be it a book, starter kit, character sheet, whatever, before you add it to your cart, and that helps to get some of the money back that way as well. So that's amazing stuff, but it's totally optional. You don't have to do that. You're not going to be rolling a walker if you don't manage to do that. It's completely optional, so if you can do that, that's great. But if you can't do that, that's also fine as well. But what you should definitely do regardless, if give the video a little cheeky little thumbs up if you want more content like this, subscribe to the Lore by Night channel, and share this video with anyone and everyone who loves what I do, and I'll see you on the next upload, wherever that may well be for you. And until next time, farewell.